love to listen in the morning. Jimmy Lakey on the radio. I got my coffee and cream. Jimmy's on the air. Wake up and start your day. Now go and tell all the neighbors, yeah. Then crank up the radio. There's infotainment, brilliance to get you on your way. Wake up and start your day with Jimmy Lakey.
Well, heidi ho, America. Good to have you here on the Lakey Unleashed Daily Update. Jimmy Lakey is my name. Top of the morning to you. Big breaking news story. But first, the hammer. It's going away after today. I think Juan Valdez and the construction crew have finished up what we're going to put behind me. And tomorrow morning, I think we'll have a big unveiling. So don't miss it. I think you'll find it incredibly sexy. So hammer goes away. I don't know why I still have it here. They don't let me touch the sharp object. Anyway, good morning to you. It is Wednesday, the 8th day of January, year of our Lord, 2025. And if you're new to this little project we have going on here, it's a labor of love, my friends, the Lakey Unleashed podcast. I've spent many years in the confines of corporate talk radio in America, local shows in Colorado, some national fill-ins, and finally have been freed and unleashed from the bonds of corporate radio. And we're doing an Unleashed podcast where I make the rules up and you get to enjoy the rules that I make up. So anyway, good to have you here on the podcast this morning, the broadcast, the stream, whatever we call this thing. We are live, and you're in front of the, hopefully you're watching live. I don't know, some people don't watch it live. You go back and watch it throughout the course of the day. I got a breaking news story about a filing by President Trump in front of the Supreme Court. I'll get to that here in just a moment. But first of all, out there, be sure you're commenting on all the platforms you're on. Hello, Facebook, facebook.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page, facebook.com/Red Wave America, facebook.com/The Media Equalizer. Hello to all of you. Also, those of you on the Rumble page, if you're not on Rumble, just search my name. The YouTube, the Instagram, we are there, my friends. We are out there and partying it up. And I think we're on X. We're on X as well. So wherever you're listening at, you can, for most part, you'll see live comments, and those comments do show up in the studio, and you see some of them popping right there. That's a YouTube. You see the symbol. That's a YouTube watcher. Dennis is watching on the YouTubes this morning. So comment, enjoy, and participate in the program. It's all better with your participation. All right, this breaking news story that Donald Trump has filed an emergency petition to the Supreme Court to prevent sentencing by Judge Marchand this Friday. A lot of folks were shocked that Judge Marchand said, yeah, you're going to have to appear in court either virtually or in person, and I'm going to scold you and pretty much release everything, but you have a felony, but there's no punishment for that felony. And a lot of folks say, why right before the inauguration? Why it's really just Judge Marchand trying to please his radical liberal idiocy that's in his own head, his own family, and his own whack jobs that he hangs out with. And so Judge Marchand had set the sentencing for this Friday, January the 10th. And now Donald Trump has said, hey, this is dumb. This is not necessary. And they have filed an emergency petition with the United States Supreme Court asking the court to correct the unjust actions by the New York court and stop the unlawful sentencing in the Manhattan DA's witch hunt, according to a Trump spokesperson. The Supreme Court's historic decision on immunity, the Constitution, and established legal precedent mandate that this meritless case be immediately dismissed. So he's going to the Supreme Court. And everybody that I talk to that's a legal scholar, whether they're a Trump fan or not, says even if they sentence him to nothing or keep the felony, this will be overturned by a higher New York court, perhaps. But Donald Trump says, let's end the nonsense. And so we will see how that goes. But that is a breaking news story that Donald Trump's legal team has filed an emergency petition to the Supreme Court and say, we want you to intervene so that what happens in Judge Marchand's court on Friday actually just doesn't happen. So that is a breaking news story. Another breaking news story, if you haven't followed it, I woke up early this morning and California is on fire. They are absolutely on fire. If anybody's listening or watching in California, jump into the chat rooms. Let us know what you're hearing. All of the platforms, let us know what it's like on the ground. Looks like there's 3 major fires that they're calling a worst case scenario that have exploded around the Los Angeles area. The Los Angeles, who said that? Somebody said Los Angeles. The Los Angeles area. And one of the Palisades area, that's a neighborhood that a lot of big famous people live in. I was reading a tweet from James Wood, actor James Wood, who's a conservative, by the way, good guy to follow on the Twitter or the X. He was talking about in his neighborhood, all the insurance companies had already dropped everybody's insurance because of fire warnings even a month ago. So James Wood has said it's been kind of brewing that there's a fire danger going on there. I read somewhere, I'm not trying to spread this, but I read somewhere, and any of you in California can let me know, that they had really, since October, September, been restricting prescribed burns. I don't know if that's a local thing, a state thing. It could have just been an interweb thing, but these fires have exploded in California, and there's 3 major ones circulating around Malibu, Palisade Hills, and just some crazy areas. And if you're out in California anywhere, you're probably getting a little bit more localized news coverage. Jump in if you're on Facebook, you're on the YouTube watching us in California. Now, let us know what you hear. Love to get your comments. It's a way that you can participate in the program. But your thoughts and prayers for the people of California. I was trying our pre-show meeting with the producer, Chad. I was trying to corroborate this thing that California had really struck down on prescribed burns. I did find that they were trying to pass laws to allow more prescribed burns. So I don't know what they're doing in California with the prescribed burns, but evidently LA is on fire this morning, and the area, and it's not good. All right, let me skip that story. Donald Trump's chief of staff has laid down the law, and we're going to follow. Susie Wiles is her name, and basically she's not putting up with any drama. And that's why Trump hired her to be chief of staff. He ran a very disciplined campaign, and there's a story out there that anybody getting hired at this time, they're hiring a bunch of people to work in the White House, is being told by Susie Wiles, you will keep your nose clean, and you will work as a team, and you're not going to gain celebrity out of this, and we're not going to have any crap from anybody. I think Susie Wiles, by all accounts in the campaign and in the chief of staff, is probably the best thing that ever happened to Donald Trump in his campaign. Very disciplined she seems to be. And I always like to point out when you talk about Susie Wiles, she is Pat Summerall's daughter, the late, great Pat Summerall. That's his daughter. She's ringing the bell at about 65 years old. So this is her epic part of her career, but she's been involved in politics for a while. But she's laying it down, and it's like an employee orientation. You don't want to deal. I think Donald Trump said in an interview they called her Mrs. The Ice Woman or the Ice Lady, because they said she can be as cold as ice and she ain't putting up with crap. So that's fun. Anyway, there's that story. I mentioned this yesterday, and some people were screaming at me, it's today, meaning yesterday, that Don Trump Jr. was heading to Greenland. I said, I don't know if he's going before the inauguration or after the inauguration. And sure enough, Don Trump Jr. was in Greenland yesterday. Oh, by the way, hello to the Instagram people. It was the folks on Instagram, just look up my name on Instagram, that were yelling at me that the Don Trump Jr. party to Greenland was happening yesterday. And so hello on Instagram. By the way, if you don't usually use YouTube or Instagram, go ahead and like us on those pages. And that way it just builds up our following, and it helps the algorithm say, hey, this Lakey Unleashed thing is pretty damn important. Oh, by the way, look at my title this morning. No one's commented on that. My title usually says Lakey Unleashed, or host of the show, or around Christmas it says Santa's helper. You see that right under there? Yesterday, in 2 separate sentences, Laura Carno, one time she said, I'm incorrigible. And then another time she said, I'm adorable. So I've decided that one of my monikers, besides former Chippendale dancer, which I know many of you, I hate to mention that because some of you ladies just stumbled in your walk with the Lord. But yeah, along with former Chippendale dancer, I need to remind you that I'm an adorable incorrigible. So just nobody saw that this morning, and it kind of breaks my heart that you're not paying attention to what I put up there. Shameful. It really is. Greenland, back to Greenland. I'm chasing rabbits here. Back to Greenland. Don Trump Jr. was there, and I was watching several bits of commentary yesterday, and a lot of folks think this Greenland thing is legit, that this could very well happen. And they were laying out scenarios. There could be some kind of a purchase to Denmark. There could be Greenland declaring themselves independent and fighting it out themselves. There could be some kind of a partnership that's put together that maybe don't become a U.S. territory. There's all sorts of scenarios that historically could happen. And it was the early 1900s that we paid cash money for part of the Virgin Islands. And so that was the last time we did such an expansion with cash. And so this could be very interesting, but it seems like they're serious because they know it's a strategic place. And I was talking to a Marine yesterday. He said that he was saying that one of the things it would do if you're in Greenland, it would free up a lot of the military from depending on depending on some of these European bases where they don't support America and their NATO. It just kind of gives America a little bit stronger hold there, because sometimes these NATO allies are wussies, and it prevents us from being beholden and linked at the hip to wussies. And so it's very interesting. People thought it was just hyperbole by Donald J. Trump, but it really is. I heard somebody say yesterday that we will look back in 5-10 years and see that this trip by Donald Trump Jr. and a delegation to Greenland is a historic moment in which the dominoes start to fall. So give me your thoughts. Could Greenland become part of the USA? And it's not just hyperbole. Evidently, there's a strategic defense initiative that could happen out of there. And they're worried that if we don't lay claim to some of that area, that Russia and China also are going to start being nasty there. And we just need to put our flag there. So that's going to be interesting. Somebody said yesterday that yesterday's visit by Don Trump Jr. shall be historic. Another thing, I don't know if you saw this, Trump says he wants the Panama Canal back. Jimmy Carter, of course, sold that thing for $1.97 or something, $1.97 and a coupon to Chuck E. Cheese. He really pretty much gave it back to the Panamanians. But my understanding, and I don't follow international trade, is that the Panama folks, the Panamanians, have allowed a contract in which China pretty much controls the Panama Canal. And that's one of the things, again, why is Donald Trump walking around with this swagger and saying he wants Greenland and he wants the Panama Canal? Well, he's walking around with his swagger because evidently he understands the threat of China and Russia in Greenland, and that's strategic. He also understands by far that China has way too much influence in the Panama Canal. And if China ever decides to be, let's say, troublesome, then it's going to be a bad day for America. And that could really upset international trade and the shipping waters and shipping paths. So this is what the Panama Canal is. And I haven't heard a lot of commentary on it. I haven't studied it much. A lot of this swagger has been happening while I was on a Christmas holiday and traveling in Africa. But that's the whole thing of the Panama Canal and Greenland. It's not just Donald Trump being an expansionist. It's Donald Trump saying, hey, we have some weaknesses here. We have weaknesses in NATO. We have weaknesses in the North Atlantic. We have weakness on international trade because China and Russia are too influential, and we need to assert our power here, and we need to obtain some territories and take back some properties here because we're the only ones that are big and bad enough to stand up to these the commie Chinese and the tyrannical Russian former commies. So anyway, stand by. It's going to get really interesting in the next several weeks and months, and I'm telling you, there is a method behind what some people call the madness of Donald J. Trump. Anybody hear this? When I first heard this about Trump in his transition period, I thought it was a joke, and then I realized it's not. He is renaming, and I guess he can just do this and declare it that way, and probably executive order. They're going to rename the Gulf of Mexico. They're going to rename the Gulf of Mexico. I'm not sure if that's an act of Congress. I mean, it's on every international map, so it's not like the United States. Everybody calls it the Gulf of Mexico. But Donald Trump says he's going to rename it, and it's going to be called the Gulf of America. I kind of like it. I think it has a ring to it. The Gulf of America is going to happen. So there's that. Give me your thoughts on all the chat room is open, and I'd love to hear from you. All the platforms give you an opportunity to say hello. Anybody in California, love your updates on the fires out there that are burning, and feel free to jump in. Let me read some of the chats that are coming in to me. You're adorable, incorrigible this morning. Rich says trying to thaw in Missouri Ozarks today. Stay frosty. I don't want to stay frosty, Rich. Unless it's a reference to a beverage, I don't want to stay frosty. Arloa's down in Texas. She says, unusually cold here in Texas this morning, but happy to be here listening to you. Arloa, you're a sweetheart. Glad to have you listening to me this morning. Who's in California? You have any California folks out there? I'm not exactly sure, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the fires that are burning down California. We got one that says, good morning to you and the crew. And so, yeah, good morning to you and the crew as well. Thank you. I appreciate you. All right. A lot of you watching on the Facebook platform right now. We're going to play something for you in just a second. Facebook evidently has come to their senses or come to Jesus or something. They've come to Trump. And Mark Zuckerberg yesterday, the Facebook CEO, made a big change in policy that will be implemented over the next couple months. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. Because Elon Musk changed the conversation of freedom of speech whenever he exposed with the Twitter files what Twitter had been doing to really squelch conversation. We were on the verge of losing our First Amendment rights because of Silicon Valley and their cooperation with the government. And Elon Musk changed the whole dang thing. And you started to see really last year, Mark Zuckerberg was saying some things that made you think, that's interesting. It's like he was having a change of heart. I am not sure what was going on in his heart or in his head, but it seemed like he was. Even he was very famous after the first Trump assassination attempt. He said, I don't care what you think of that guy. That guy's a badass, is what he said. He's like, there was something about Donald Trump that impressed him. I saw some people looking at a meeting that he and Trump had later, in which, again, I'm not a psychiatrist, but people have kind of read the body language, said that they looked at Zuckerberg in the body language in that meeting, and he was like looking up like, you're an idol. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg was idolizing with stares and glazes. He was looking as affectionately to Donald Trump in that meeting. I think it was at Mar-a-Lago. Some psychiatrist said that maybe it looked like Jill Biden looking at him at the Notre Dame dedication. So there seems to have been a change of heart. There seems to be a change of heart in Mark Zuckerberg. And so Zuckerberg yesterday announced that they're going to stop this fact-checking stuff by third-party fact-checkers. And I can't tell you how many times during the Booger Cootie time that I was shadow banned and locked out, and I'd produce something out there and nobody would let me. And that's where I came up with the name Booger Cootie virus, the name that thing from China that we got, that little virus. I also came up with the phrase little effer for the Fauci and Dr. Scarf for the Burks. And I did that because it bypassed all the algorithms. They couldn't figure it out. If I just said the Booger Cootie virus and the little effer's lying to you, they couldn't fact check me on that. So we did that and we kind of overcame it. But it's going to be interesting to see what Mark Zuckerberg does and what happens to the Facebook platform. Now, I'm going to play the audio from Zuckerberg, a little bit of it. He did about 5 or 10 minutes, but we're going to play a couple of minutes of it. Tell me what you think. Facebook is the one that he's kind of going the way of Twitter. We're going to allow community to correct itself. We're going to allow free speech to happen. And unless there's something dangerous out there, everybody's going to talk and everybody can kind of present their ideas. And we're not going to choose side. And he says in this that it became too political. Now, if what Zuckerberg says comes true and he changes Facebook like he says he will, you have Twitter that has changed. You have Facebook that will have changed, and that will leave one more behemoth to get back to the model of free speech, and we'll talk about that after this. Roll the tape. Mark Zuckerberg yesterday talking about big changes at Facebook. Meta.
I want to talk about something important today, because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do.
I want to pause here. Zuckerberg's still there. Notice what he said. He read the tea leaves of this election. He sees what a lot of people in Hollywood and Silicon Valley and maybe even on The View or something aren't willing to admit, that this election was a tipping point. And America said, we're tired of this DEI, politically correct nonsense. We're sick of it. I've always said it, the laws of physics, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And Mark Zuckerberg's reading the tea leaves and he's making a confession that a lot of folks don't want to make, that the late night talk show hosts don't want to make, the people probably over at Google don't want to make it, the tubes at the U, they don't want to make it. But this election was America standing up, not just for the border, but saying, stop it. Stop shoving these theories and forcing us all to think alike. We can have diversity of opinion. We can think different things things about different topics, and you can't squelch us. And I love the fact that Zuckerberg said, hey, I've come to my senses. I'm looking at this election of Donald Trump, and America's, I've had all I can stand, and I can't stand no more. And good for Zuckerberg. Continue the tape here.
First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system. Second, we're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Hey, we were saying we were the party of inclusivity. We were saying we're the good guys, and yet we turned out to be the bad guys, and we were tyrants and spreaders of hate, and we're going to stop it. People have different opinions, and maybe the stuff we've been pushing about transgenderism, sexuality, the stuff we've been pushing about immigration, maybe we're the ones out of touch. It's Zuckerberg. This is like, I feel like I'm a priest, and he's having confession right here and saying, hey, we've come to Jesus here, and we realized we were out of touch. Our fact checkers were out of touch with what mainstream America thought, and this election proved it. Continue the conversation, Mr. Zuckerberg.
And it's gone too far. So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms.
All we ask.
Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce the mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms. We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation.
Bots.
Now, we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high-severity violations. And for lower severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take action. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the US government. And that's why it's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the US government has pushed for censorship.
Did you hear that? Hey, all you leftist trolls out there. Mark Zuckerberg in Silicon Valley with a lot to lose and not get invited to the country club is saying that Joe Biden, the party of Jared Polis, the party of Kamala Harris, have pushed for censorship. They spit in the face of freedom of speech. That's the party of the modern Democrat Party. And right out of the lips of Mark Zuckerberg, he says, hey, it's been hard for us because they're pushing us for censorship. The people that were pushing Zuckerberg, Facebook, Twitter towards censorship, I believe the Department of Justice should look into, and there should be charges filed somewhere. They violating the Constitution, pushing organizations, forcing them by policy or regulation or threats to do things that are anti-constitutional. Zuckerberg just says that the Joe Biden administration was pushing them, forcing them the last 4 years to do things that were unconstitutional and the antithesis of free speech. So anybody who out there thinks that, hey, it's just you talk show guys, you conservatives that think that Joe Biden spits in the face and doesn't like the Constitution, you're dang wrong. It's not just us. Here's Mark Zuckerberg, his own lips, confessing to you that he's been pushed and at times really heavy-handed, glad-handed, in where they had to do censorship because the government was pushing them.
By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further. But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression, and I am excited to take it. It'll take time to get this right, and these are complex systems. They're never going to be perfect. There's also a lot of illegal stuff that we still need to work very hard to remove. But the bottom line is that after years of having our content moderation work focus primarily on removing content, it is time to focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our systems, and getting back to our roots about giving people voice. I'm looking forward to this next chapter. Stay good out there, and more to come soon.
Stay good. Everybody stay good. I think that's an amazing mea culpa in a sense. And, maybe he was a willing participant, but, when you're running a big company like that and you've got federal regulators willing to look at you, hey, President Biden would like you to do this. The Department of Justice would like you to do this. And if you don't do this, the Federal Trade Commission would be happy to look at some of your books, or there's just so much pressure they have. Now, what are your thoughts? Did Zuck really have I think that's very sincere. I've watched the metamorphosis of Zuck, and he admitted he was being pressured by the government. Scott says, I'm not sure he had to come to Jesus, just saw the truth. Jeff says, we don't know who these third-party fact checkers were. They never told us, did they? They never said. Roger says, Zuck said Brother Elon would fail with cutting jobs at Twitter, but then he copied him. He is now Brother Elon, copying Brother Elon on freedom of speech. Brother Elon challenged Zuck to a UFC fight, and instead Zuck brought Dana White into the board of directors. I mean, it's really, that's true. I forgot about that. Remember, there's going to be Elon and Zuck. We're going to have a battle royale, and now Dana White's on the board of directors. And Dana White, well, he's just a wrestling guy, his fight guy. No, Dana White's the guy that stopped his family vacation and flew into the Republican convention in Cleveland or Cincinnati, wherever they were at, Madison, Wisconsin, wherever they were in Wisconsin. And he stood up and made the nomination speech for Donald Trump, and he's now on the board of directors for Meta. Mr. Kaplan, who's is also behind this. He was a Bush guy. It's very fantastical what's happening with Zuckerberg, and we're going to watch it unfold. And I'm telling you, if and his admission is a punch in the face of all the Silicon Valley guys that said, no, it's all for the saving of democracy. Zuckerberg says, no, that's a lying sack of crap. That's a bunch of Sacagawea. We were being pressured by the government to censor you out there. So any of you that thought, why do they shut me down? Why don't they let my post spread? It's because Zuckerberg and his crew had been threatened by the government that they had to censor people, and it's a mea culpa there, and it's a slap in the face of everybody that to everybody out there that was denying it and was supporting that stuff, that you're just using the government as a weapon, i.e. you're like a commie in China or tyrants out there. All right, you got that one. Just see this other story here. Steve Lappy's coming up later in the program. Also, I want to remind you that Doug Giles, my brother from a different mother, he makes his first reappearance on the podcast, the broadcast, the stream this morning. He'll be in just a little bit as well. Steve Lappy coming up, and then we also have we're going to have Doug Giles. He's going to start doing a weekly appearance as well, like the old radio days. Doug Giles will be with us. All right, a couple more stories to fast forward through. I want to do this is. A Georgia judge has ordered Fani Willis to pay Judicial Watch $22,000 in legal fees. You got this thing with Marchand, Judge Marchand being now fought in the Supreme Court with an emergency injunction there. And you have Fani Willis, who was having an affair with her other prosecutors and screwing around literally and doing things. That case has just fallen apart. And then the judge says, hey, by the way, you were not cooperating when Judicial Watch and Tom Fitton were asking for some financial and some just open records. You didn't cooperate. They had to go to court. So Fani, out of your own fat ass pocket, you got to give them $21,578. Let's just round it up to $22,000. Fani Willis, I don't think she will reputation should ever recover from this. And financially, she may not recover from this as well. The court gives her $22,000 fees and cost because she would not cooperate with open records. Because why? Leftists, freaks like her, and like the people that have been running Silicon Valley for a while, they don't want things to be out in the open. They want things to be in the dark, and Fani has tried to keep it in the dark, and the judge says, no, you're going to have to cooperate here. Let me get your thought on this. Well, this is another little video I want to show you. There's outrage about this. I think Deb Fisher is her name. She's a senator from Nebraska. Hello, Nebraska. Glad to have you here. The senator, she was getting sworn into the Senate this couple of days ago, and her husband was there with her, and he's going to hold the Bible. And this has gone viral, and the left is like, oh, my God, this is such disrespect. I can't believe this is happening. And the right is going, this guy's a hero. We ought to make him the U.S. senator from Nebraska. This is just a cut. It's gone viral. You might have seen it. Is this appropriate? The question I want you to go with, is this appropriate? You may not like Kamala. You may not like her. You may not like her. But is this a moment where you're supposed to respect the moment and respect the office as not disrespect the person and disrespecting the office? Kamala Harris getting the swearing in of Senator Fisher from Nebraska, and watch how her husband reacts.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, sure.
Down. He would not look the entire time. He would not look at Kamala in the eye. He's just staring at the Bible, holding the Bible. And they had to force him. If you watch the whole video, they had to force him to scoot closer to her, scoot closer. And at first, when I saw it, I said, I think he has a special needs. Maybe he had a malady, or maybe he'd had some medical problem. I thought maybe he had a stroke. He did not even want to stand next to Kamala. And then he's going to refuse to shake her hand and won't look her in their eye. And she puts the hand out, and he says, thank you. And it walks right past her, and she pulls her hand back as if she's a leper, and she pulls her hand back and says, okay. And so at one point she had to turn to him, stand closer, I won't bite. She actually said she won't bite. We should ask Willie Brown if she bites. Did I say that out loud? Was that my inside voice or my outside voice? I mean, she said she doesn't bite, but I don't know. Willie Brown would know better than I would. Play it again one more time. Is this appropriate behavior? Give me your thoughts out there wherever you are at. Willie Brown call Willie, see if we can get him on. Find out if she bites. All right, here we go. Play it again.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Sure. I know that's a bad cut of it, but it's an amazing moment. It was definitely awkward, Karen says. He had a cane in one hand and a Bible in the other. Maybe he had a cane in the one hand, the Bible in the other. So maybe he couldn't shake it. But you could see by he refused. He wasn't even attempting to do it. He wouldn't even look her in the eye. And so it's kind of funny. I think it's funny as heck. I really do. All right, before I bring in our first guest of the morning, Steve Laffey makes a regular appearance on the show. Steve Laffey, longtime friend of the program, radio, and now we continue on the new Lakey Unleashed podcast. A couple of things I want to remind you of. Number one way you can support and keep this daily update going free. We wake up early morning. Producer Chad and I were exchanging messages, 6 a.m. Mountain time, getting ready for this thing. We put a lot of work into it, and at this point, it's a labor of love on our part. We really want to grow this into something cool, and we're working our butts off to do it, and you can help us do that. One of the ways is subscribe to Lakey Unleashed at patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. It's one way that you can have this feed. If you miss it during the day, you'll get a ping when we load it up there right after, and all the Lakey Unleashed stuff will go there. There's also some stuff that's Lakey Unleashed that is behind a paywall. In other words, you only see it if you pay. It's $9.95 a month, 7-day free trial, and you're going to get content there that I think will be very valuable. There's a lot of stuff there on the Booger Cootie virus. Dr. John Thorpe interview. We played some excerpts of that this week. He's a fireball, man. It was a great interview. As a matter of fact, he was so strongly opinionated, I had to go back in and make sure that we were safe to say everything he said. It was a powerful interview. That's on there. I mean, Trevor Loudon was one of our first guests. There's a lot of content already there. We're just going to keep adding to it. And I would ask you, that's one way you can support. Now, also, we have folks out there that are reaching out and ready to be advertisers. There's some things that will be category exclusive. We've got people locking down, asking me if I will endorse products, endorse them, and we're filling that up. But there's also just we can run commercials here. We can you can have your logo behind me. I mean, there's all sorts of sponsorship levels. Whether you got a big budget or small budget, I think we have something for you, and we got a very loyal audience out there. And listen, when we start bringing out and announcing the advertisers, you guys have to. Another thing besides the Patreon, you need to remember these people. They can be in any part of the country. Starting off, I'm sure they'll be Colorado centric. But if you're listening in New York, I have a national product. We can help you with that as well. Reach out to us at info@jimmylakey.com, info@jimmylakey.com. We're on the time. We're trying to build this thing, and you can help us build that. Business owners, guys with lots of money, women with lots of money, you can help us do that and get it on the ground floor. This is we're really working to turn this into a legitimate type of operation. We're not sparing any expenses if we can afford it. We're just trying to make it right. Tomorrow you'll see the new backdrop come in, and that's going to be exciting. And it'll change once we get the studio sponsored, and that will the thing behind me will change. So there's just a lot of ways. Would you please do that? info@jimmylakey.com. I'll send you a packet of information. That's it, and then you can let us know if you're interested. And also patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. Okay, if you want this to continue to be on and be free, well, that's how you can support it to happen. All right, one more thing, then I go to Steve Laffey. January the 20th is a day that Donald J. Trump will take the oath of office and become president number 47. It's a day of celebration for many of you. It'll be a day of angst for people like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, if Joe Biden even knows where he's at that day. But anyway, we're going to have a party here in California, Colorado. Where am I at? We've got people paying attention from all over, but this is in Colorado. It's worth flying in, driving in, wherever you're at. It's in northern Colorado, outside of Boulder, Lafayette, Colorado, a place called Casbar Cigar Lounge. It's one of the best cigar lounges, I think, in the country. It's a place that I'm a big fan of, and I hope you'll join us. It's a free event, and yes, there will be cigars there, so if that's going to offend you, don't come. There will probably be some celebrations of Diet Cokes and things like that. It's going to be a big time, and it's a free admission thing. Just go there, buy a cigar. It's going to be a fun day. It's January the 20th, and we'll be doing the live stream from the Casbar Cigar Lounge in Lafayette, Colorado. And just because you don't live in Lafayette or in Colorado, don't let that stop you. If you didn't get invited to the inauguration, you're getting invited to my inauguration party. Very nice of me, isn't it? You're welcome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as we do every week at this time, he's my good friend, Steve Laffey. You can find his SteveLaffey.com, SteveLaffey.com. He's an author. He's run for president. He's run for Senate. He's made a movie. If you want to know all about what's happening in the world about China, etc., he's written the book on it, literally. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Steve Laffey. Steve, Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year, Jimmy. Great to be back with you. Great show. It's very entertaining, and let's keep rocking.
Yeah, we do it. We do it while we can. We make hay while the sun is up. There's some saying here. All right, we're talking a lot of inauguration and stuff, but you always pay attention to some of the financial things going on. What's the Fed doing? What's the trade look like with China? And you send me a headline here that the Fed's Waller backs more rate cuts, as he doesn't think proposed tariffs are going to spark inflation. Give me your thoughts here, because some people freak out about the tariffs. Some people say it's a great idea. Some people freak out about the rate cut. Some people say we're cutting them too fast. Where are we at on this whole thing, Steve?
So Waller is right. Let's stop back on tariffs. Tariffs do not cause inflation. Money causes inflation. So let's just say the price of butter doubled due to we imported all of our butter. You would buy some canola oil, wouldn't you? Right? The producers of butter overseas would take a hit. The people who sell it would take a hit. The price wouldn't rise quite the double. And over time, people would find substitutes, right? Everybody listening knows this. So you go into a shopping mall and you see beef at $12 a pound. So you buy chicken, right? So, or you buy beans or whatever you do. So now there's some things that have what we call very low elasticity demand, inelastic demand. That's like oil. Like you got to drive to work. If you're still working and you're not working from home, you've got to drive somewhere, and you can't change that. You can change the car that you drive over the next year, supposedly, right? But you can't change the fact that you're driving to work or heating your home or whatever it might be. So do prices rise with tariffs? Certainly they'll rise on whatever goods that put tariffs on, but other prices will have to go down unless, and here's the big point, unless the Fed monetizes it, then you have inflation. Because inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. Now, the second part of that article is that what's happening now, since the Federal Reserve has been wrong about inflation for a long time. It was April 28th, I think, of 2021, when the head of the Fed called it inflation transitory, right, Jimmy? Remember the word transitory? Yep. So, yep. And of course, by the end of that year, inflation was running at 9%. Now, they think they declare victory when they have what they call disinflation, when inflation's only running at 3. But 3 destroys the middle class just slower than 9. Right? So here's the thing that Waller was taught to do today. This is a different part of the story. Waller came out to say that inflation's not going to be a problem. And what he does goes back to what I learned in 1989 on a trading desk at Payne Weber. Waller comes out and says, disinflation is more apparent if one smooths through the recent upticks. So just read through the lines on that. When one smooths through the fact that inflation's starting to accelerate. And what he likes to do, Jimmy, he says, quote, I often look at the 6-month percent change in core PCE, which is at 2.4 rather than what's happening at 2.8 or 3. So when he says I often look at this, Jimmy, he means I'm trying to find the lowest 6-month or the lowest year over the year or the lowest thing I can say to the public. So he doesn't often look at that, Jimmy. It's a complete lie. He's trying to find looking backwards. If, for example, last month's CPI was lower than the PPI, he would have said, I always look at last month's CPI, Consumer Price Index.
Yeah.
If indeed the Supercore PCE or some other index. But then what he says next is that a third of inflation, which has been going up faster than 2/3 of inflation, is imputed prices on housing services and non-market services, which are estimates. So he's saying, throw that out, even though that's been going up the most, because I don't like to look at it. Now, if that was going up, if that was going down, he would say, let's not look at that. Let's look at this. So he's been trotted out because the Fed's been wrong every single time since you and I have talked for a long period of time. Yeah. They kept rates at zero for a long period of time. You and I have talked about what's happened since they've cut interest rates. There's never been, since the Fed started cutting interest rates in the history of Fed, this kind of rise in the 10-year yield. It's gone from 3.6 to today 4.7 after they started cutting rates. Usually when the Fed starts cutting rates, because they cut rates in the short end, they all start coming down. But we have a giant problem that you and I have talked about for a couple of years that I said is going to come to fruition, which is why I ran for president. And it's happening now. We have to roll. In other words, turn all of that $17 trillion over the next 3 years that was issued many times at 1%, a quarter of 1%, 2%, if it was a 30-year bond. We have to turn that. It's all coming due in 3 years.
Yeah.
We've got to borrow that at what is now an average of the 10-year bond is yielding 4.6. So on average, rates that are being rolled as far as yields to the Fed, to the cost to the taxpayers, are going to rise 3%. What's 3% on 17 trillion? Just to make up a number. It's almost 500 billion of extra interest cost per year. Not paying down the debt.
Yeah.
It's the cost of extra interest costs. So when we say that we're borrowing interest costs now at $1 trillion per year when we only collect $4.5 trillion when there's no recession and we spend 6 point something trillion.
Yep.
What we're saying, Jimmy, is that we can't do this. so everybody seems to know it, but the Fed.
Yeah.
And the last point about the Fed would simply be that in this statement and in all of their statements, they never mentioned the word money, even though they're in charge of the money supply. For 10 years, they have never mentioned the word money on all of their statements, on all of their transcripts. And everybody listening knows that money causes inflation.
Yeah.
Money and the spinning around of money, the velocity of money. How many times? So when you're in Venezuela, the reason that that inflation went so high is not that they sent the money out so quickly to cause inflation. It's just that when you got it in the morning, Jimmy, you said, I better buy an orange today, like right now before 4 p.m., because at 4 p.m. it'll be more expensive. Yeah. That's how bad it got in Venezuela. Now, we're not going to see that here. But the thought process that he thinks it's still coming down when it's starting to go back up is a complete, unadulterated lie. And anybody who runs money knows it. People with money own commodities. They own oil. They own wheat. They own silver. And the people in the lower middle class are barely making it by and don't have $1,000 extra to pay the bills.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah. Steve Laffey, if you're just listening to the program, I don't know a lot of you watch it, but some of you just listen to your work. That's the voice of Steve Laffey, his website, stevelaffey.com. Steve, let me rapid fire on a couple of other topics here. Number one, you've been a warning, guy sounding a warning about communist China and how we have to keep them in check. Something's been interesting. People thought it was Trump's swagger, but there seems to be a method maybe to the madness. Yeah. He says we need to put a flag in the ground somehow in Greenland, buy it, partnership there, because if we don't, eventually China or Russia will have more influence there. He also says we got to take back the Panama Canal because the Panamanians are letting the Chinese run it. And if they decide to block that thing, the trade routes are all screwed up. Now, give me your thoughts on Greenland and the Panama Canal as a strategy to combat the growing influence and tentacles of China.
Well, it's a good strategy. For example, I mean, here's what I've always said, and you heard me talk about this. If you're starting as a president in foreign policy, take the easy things first to make everybody say, oh, no, then we're not doing that, whatever it might be. The Panama Canal is the easiest. Panama has no defense. Everybody in America listening to the show who is old enough realizes that Carter did lose the election over what happened in Iran and over the treaty and the Panama Canal and giving it up. Everybody hated it. I hated it as a 15-year-old. So my father hated it. He's passed away. So getting it back, and I'm not saying how we get it back, but at least saying to Panama and using it as a cudgel, right? And getting China out of there. They control both sides as they have little ability, they got China basically controls what happens on either side of the Panama Canal. So they need to leave.
Yeah.
So once we start the Monroe Doctrine up again, that John Kerry said was dead a long time ago, and I went crazy and so forth. But, so the Monroe Doctrine simply says we control everything to our south.
Yeah.
That's part of this continent, and everybody else stay out. And that's what's starting to happen. I think it's correct. Now, how he goes about doing it, whether he takes it over or not takes it over, I think he will get China out of there because Panama's going to have to truly obey what he says. Otherwise, I see no reason why not to go to Congress. First of all, go to Congress and tell people we want this back. And they guaranteed this, and this when we gave it back to them, and they didn't do it. Okay. Yeah. Now go to Greenland. Greenland, the guy who runs Greenland for Denmark, Greenland is part of Denmark, folks. His statement is Greenland's for Greenlanders. Well, he doesn't even mention he's owned by Denmark. So there is truth in the fact that it's strategically really important. And it's true that nobody defends it. Effectively, nobody defends Greenland. So they should sell. I hate to say it this way because when Trump's right, Trump's right. I think starting off by buttressing where we are is a good idea. Yep. Now, whatever happens, I don't know. Should Greenland just say simply, we'll sell it to you for $20 billion? I don't know what the price would be. Or should they say, we don't want to sell to you, but put your military bases wherever you want. We want U.S. to defend. Denmark is part of NATO. So something will happen there, and that will chase Russia and China out. Yep. That's the important part of anything near where we are. It gets back to this part where Trump literally brought down, as not being president, he brought down the Canadian government.
Yeah, he did.
So there's no weaker person that ever was in office that I can find in history, including Biden, than Trudeau.
Yeah.
Trudeau was a failed kindergarten teacher. And I think people might laugh when I say this, saying he's being hyperbolic. I think he was a very bad kindergarten teacher.
Then he taught drama, and evidently that didn't work out.
But his father worked with Reagan, so he had a name named Trudeau. So the way they run things in Canada, that the other people are more powerful in the provinces and so forth, they had to find someone who would win. But he brought the guy down. Why did he bring him down? Because the guy was so weak that he traveled to Mar-a-Lago and kind of begged Trump not to put on tariffs, and Trump called Canada the 51st state. It'd be an interesting question. How many Canadians would actually like to be part of the United States of America? I don't know the answer. It might be a majority of them, given how badly that country's run.
Yeah.
But that won't happen.
Yeah.
But as I sent you one last thing, I said, listen, if we're talking about people, if you look around the world and you talk about places that you could talk about, Ireland doesn't have a defense. Ireland's not part of NATO. Ireland is very strategic. He might talk about that next.
That'll upset. They're part of the British Commonwealth, so we'll say that's a divided country as well. They're not real happy with the British Commonwealth anyway. So that would be.
They might want to join up too.
Yeah, it could be fun. Steve Laffey, one more quick thing before we run short on time. Again, folks can go to your website. Yesterday, and I played the video just a moment ago, Mark Zuckerberg basically confessed from Meta. He says the last 4 years have been tough. We have been pushed by the administration to censor. I'm sure the administration is going, what is he throwing us under the bus for? And if it was true, which I think it was, why is he telling everybody? Give me your thoughts. Is Meta about to get better? It looks like Twitter or X got better. Is Meta about to change?
They'll all get better for free speech. But the important point isn't so much Mark Zuckerberg, who's just a lackey, a very, very wealthy lackey. It's the fact that none of these people seem to have the cojones to say what they actually think. Why didn't Mark Zuckerberg say to Biden, stick it up your whatever?
Yeah.
I'm worth 100 billion. Maybe today he'd only be worth 80 billion. I'm making the numbers up. What does he care? He couldn't spend it. He doesn't. What are you talking about? Why is there not a chief executive officer at Ford, General Motors, Stellantis, whatever, who didn't tell Biden in 2020, whatever, we're not doing that.
Yeah,
we're not making any electric cars. Like we're going to lose so much money, but they all did. So the real important point is that there isn't, to my knowledge, except for we could find the example, the exception, right? Of someone who runs a company, whether it's an oil company, who says, well, we're going to do this thing, we're going to be CO2, this, that, and they still say it instead of saying, I'm just digging for oil. Like, I don't know what you people are talking about. We need cheap energy. I dig for oil. This is what I do. I run BP. The BP people have destroyed shareholder value. All of them have.
Yeah.
And that's the bigger point, that they're all going to change, but they're all complete sycophants no matter what. So if Trump gets out of office, Joe Blow comes in, they'll just be with Joe Blow. They'll travel to wherever he lives. And there doesn't seem to be courage among CEOs the way they used to be.
Yeah.
And say Jack Welch was running things in back in the day.
Steve Laffey, my friend, it's a pleasure. God bless you. We'll talk to you very soon. Your website, stevelaffey.com, Laffey, stevelaffey.com. Good to have you on the show, sir. I appreciate you.
God bless you. Doing great
God
job.
bless you, my friend. Thank you very much. stevelaffey.com. Go to his website. Hey, real quick, we're waiting the arrival in 8 or 9 minutes. We're going to have Doug Giles on the program, my brother from a different mother. But let me do this. I want to play this little video here. You hear me talk about my charity, Rivers Promise. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I'll play a little video here. I think we have it, and it's in queue. And it's a video of last week. I told you we went to Africa. We did a scrubbing and cleaning. I don't know if you can see this. This is actually our campus of my primary school. And this building here has been built, and we're about to unleash the capital campaign to build the rest of it. And we went and cleaned, we scrubbed it, and we washed windows, we scrubbed floors. It was a hoot. My son was there. You'll see my son there, big muscular football player kid. He's scrubbing windows. It was a fun time. Let me just show you. This is how when they don't take it for granted. Everybody came out to help serve and to take care of what God had blessed them with through our organization, Rivers Promise. So, producer Chad, if we have that little video, we'll play just a snippet of it here, waiting on the arrival of Doug Giles. There's me sweeping. They didn't have a stick on that broom. There's me washing the windows. There's my son. Look at me, I'm scrubbing the windows. My son's friend. They throw the water, man. Just chunk it on there. Squeegees. We had it all going, man. We put all the desks out of the classroom. That's why the desks are outside. We also fed the kids little snacks. They were waiting out there to bring the desk back in. They were excited. They were thrilled. That's a kindergartner's little plastic desk there. They're cuties, aren't they? Yeah, when you donate, you're helping these kids out. I taught them how to put a box on their head. They thought it was kind of funny. See, look at there. It's beautiful. I make boxes beautiful again. That's what I do. There's my charity work on the screen, riverspromise.org. Riverspromise.org. Kids are eating. Anyway, I want you to donate to the charity if you can. Help us out. We're about to launch a capital campaign to build out the rest of the campus. There's a little ceremony. Speaking, my son's next to me over there, his friend, another friend from Africa. So anyway, it's a fun time. I appreciate all of your support. A lot of you do support what we do here with Rivers Promise, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I just want to kind of show you what we do there for riverspromise.org. Let's go to the stolen memes if we can. You know, this week was the anniversary of what we call the Insurrection Day. I'm sorry. And I have this meme from the stolen meme section. If January the 6th was a person, Let that sink in. Everybody get it? You get the humor there? If January the 6th was a person, there's a Jussie Smollett joke. First Jussie Smollett joke we've made on Lakey Unleashed. That's a stolen meme. We shamelessly steal stuff off the internet. Let's play this one again also as we talk about Joe Biden and his feckless leadership and the corruption of his administration. This is the monument that I think that Donald Trump maybe want to put up in Washington about Joe Biden and his legacy. I think that'd be a fantastic monument right there. Stolen meme section of the show. Thank you, and you're welcome. Let me also then show you this stolen meme, the difference between your and your. You see this one? It all depends on which one. The difference between your and the contraction for you are, when you know your stuff, when you know you are. Let that one sink in. That's a funny one. I spewed my coffee out of my mouth when I saw that. There's Kayleigh McEnany, was a great press secretary, and then Corinne Jean-Pierre, who's not the brightest bulb in the box. So yeah, there's a difference when that contraction happens and how you say it. One more stolen meme we'll put up there. Kermit the Frog. We've talked a little bit about the conspiracies have always turned out to be right. Kermit's smoking a cigarette there and says, sometimes I wonder if people who unfriended me in 2019 are starting to realize I was right. All the folks who are talking about this Facebook and the Zuckerberg and how they don't, just have really squelched down on free speech and really tried to limit what we were able to say. Well, I just have to ask you, has anybody ever come to you and apologized? I mean, Zuckerberg says he was pressured by the last 4 years by the administration, but has anybody offered an apology for being so wrong and calling you a conspiracy theorist, when a lot of the conspiracies they thought you had have turned out to be absolutely, positively correctly? All right, here's a quick question for you. The state legislature in Colorado is going into session today. And the first couple of days are going to be speeches. But here's a question of the day I want to ask you. If you could pass any law, if you were a legislator, you're a governor, you're king for a day, if you will, what would you pass? What would your edict be? What would you say? This has to happen because I say so. I've thought of a couple of my travel a lot. And number one thing is, if you own a cell phone, which I think all of us probably do, you have to always have your headphones with you. It should be a rule of law that you have to have your cell phone with you. I can't tell you how many people, either on airplanes, sitting at a bar, sitting at a restaurant, sitting at a shop, anywhere, suddenly decide they're going to watch a video, even whether it's a reel or whatever, and they watch it with their if you're going to, you've got to carry your headphones and you have to use them. It would be like a penalty of law, maybe the death penalty, for playing audio where everybody else has to hear it. I sparred that question. I told producer Chad, we had a friend yesterday that was, we were spending some time with in our show prep time, and he took a phone call, and I guess because he was busy, he decided to put the phone call on speaker. And so producer Chad and I are sitting there trying to have a conversation. This guy's got his call on speaker in a public place. And I said, see, if I were king for a day, he'd probably be flogged out front right now. You got to have your, that's one law I would pass. What are the laws you would pass? You can put that in your question of the day. If you could pass any law, king for a day, make an edict, and it would come to pass, what would you do? Now, Scott gets real serious here. He says term limits. Well, I think that's a good idea. Term limits would be a marvelous thing. Here's another contemplation and consideration for you. If I were king for a day, I would redefine the laws on when you can travel with your dog in an airport or a public place. It's gone out of hand. It really has gone. I know some of you are dog lovers, and I like dogs as well, but some of you just, you need a therapist more than you need a trip. You want to go to Hawaii, you want to take your dog, you want to travel to $10 on an airplane. I was coming out of the airport the other day at DIA, coming back from my trip from Africa. They have signs up, don't let your dog go on the moving sidewalk because your dog's feet can get hurt and caught in at the end of it. And this is stupid woman. She's an ignorant fool, as I don't know who she was, but I was watching. She puts her dog and he's walking on the thing. And I'm like, this is just, the dog's going to get hurt. The dog's taking up space. You can't pass the dog. Listen, some of you, again, before you spend money on going on vacation and you think your dog has to go with you, you actually should spend that time on therapy and meds and not go on vacation. Spend that money something else. If I were king for a day, I would redefine how it is that people travel with their dogs. I think that would be a very good thing to do. So anyway, if you're king for a day, that's your question of the day. If you were king for a day, what would be the laws that you could pass? Now, like Roger just put this up in the chats. He said, if I were king for a day, I would put restrictions on yoga pants. You know, that's a good idea, because I had a friend, my friend Tony actually told me this. Tony, if you're watching together, Tony actually told me, he says, people need to realize, ladies, you should realize, and I'm going to take flack for this, that yoga pants are a privilege. It's not a right. I'm just throwing it out there. If you're wearing those tight Lululemon things, please note that some of you should not. You should rethink that. Some people that should be using the manufacturing of Omar the tent maker are trying to use Lululemons, and it's not good. So yes, I think, Roger, that's a good one. If you could put restriction on yoga pants, because please always remember, yoga pants are a privilege, not a right. So you have it. All right. So yeah, we got three. Roger and I could run the country. I think we could do that. We might let Scott in on it as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, glad to have him back with us on the new adventure, Lakey Unleashed. My brother from a different mother, we'll give you DougGiles.org is his website. But hey, he was a regular part of the radio show. Now we're on the streaming world, on all the, how many, 5 Facebook pages right now, about 200,000 eyeballs potential to look at this thing. Like it and share it. And here we go. Brother Doug Giles, brother from a different mother, back together, reunited, as Peaches and Herb said, and it feels so good. Hello, Doug.
Jimmy, how you doing, big dog? Congratulations on the new show.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you hopping on, agreeing to come. People, we often talk about your books and stuff. You're holding up the latest book. What is that one?
So this is Giles Volume 1, and it's the Biblical Warrior Collection. Jimmy, 70 plus paintings, 20 years of my work, 234 glorious glossy images. And I've got the scripture inspiration behind each painting. And I don't know if your audience has seen my artwork, but from a Christian standpoint, it's not this kumbaya, now I'll lay me down to sleep type stuff. This is real. It's raw. It's righteous, and it's rowdy. And I guarantee that if they put this book in a common area, when the kiddos are around or you got visitors, that you're going to have some kinfolk and friends transfixed by the imagery that's in here. And God gave me the gift, the ability to paint and to draw, and I wanted to depict the biblical greats with my paintbrush, Jimmy, not as bearded women, but as rough, rough and tumble, fishermen, prophets, warriors, and wild men. And Jimmy,
I don't think those. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I did it, man.
I don't think those disciples were wearing Lululemon. They weren't wearing the yoga pants, man. They were.
Well, if you take your cue from the so sassy evangelical effete world, they probably would. I mean, I studied art history. I got my my undergrad in fine art, and a minor in art history. And if you go back, to the Renaissance and pre-Renaissance, the church, by and large, and we're talking about Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, they all depicted Jesus and the boys like, gay dudes, bearded women. And I was thinking about it the other day, man. It's like, everybody's like, so why do you think they depicted them like that? It's like, And I started to scratch a bald spot on the back of my head. And then I figured it out. You have homosexual popes who hire homosexual artists, who hire gay models, and who depict the disciples and the prophets and Christ Jesus himself as, effeminate men. There you go.
Yep.
And you know what happened, Jimmy, is that all the dudes who like being dudes and think that masculinity is not toxic, they took a look at this artwork and they said, you know what? I appreciate you wanting to help me, but I think I'm going to go off to war or business or something that's got some testicular fortitude, because this effete crap that's going on inside these stained glass walls, I want nothing to do with it. And so that's well documented. And Leon Pottles goes off on the church's impotency and its effeminacy in his book, The Church Impotent. So anyway.
If you want a copy of the new book, the art book by Doug, go to DougGiles.org, DougGiles.org. I'm sure it's on Amazon as well, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, Amazon, click your mouse, melt your plastic. It's you'll have it for your lifetime. You'll pass it on to your children's children. And I know I did it, but I kid you not, it's it's gritty, it's good, and it depicts the biblical greats in a way that most little Christian artists won't go there.
And there's no depiction of skinny jeans in the Doug Giles artwork. I can attest to that.
Big screen, skinny jeans, and smoke machines.
That's the modern church of today. Skinny jeans and smoke machines. Woo, hallelujah. All right, you got a piece up at clashdaily.com, and the headline, we've been talking about this, that Zuckerberg, I don't know, it didn't even seem like a hostage video. It seemed like it was a confession. He said the government has been forcing us the last 4 years. It's gotten too political. We're gonna go the way of brother Elon and not the way of we've been going. I guess the question you've asked at Clash Daily is, do you buy it? He's now putting even conservatives in leadership roles at the Meta organization. What do you think of this thing with Zuckerberg? This mea culpa, this come to Jesus.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember, but we used to rule Clash Daily, myself, on Facebook. We made a lot of money on Facebook, and in 2015, he started to throttle us back. And I mean, we're talking about, this wasn't a little blog. It was a full-on demon thrashing company that was highly monetized. And he started crushing our content. And then he pulled the plug on us on October 10th, 2018. And we went from a near $7-figure dollar company to nothing. And it was because of Zuckerberg's censorship. He didn't like, if we said anything, Jimmy, about Caitlyn Jenner and we called him Bruce, all of a sudden we would get all these, massive flags ratcheting down our reach. And our reach was 10 to 20 million page views per week, not month or year, but per week. We were killing it. And if we said anything, oh, Jimmy, anything about the religion of peace, bam, here they come, man. Here they come with, razor blades and lemon juice. And we had our company up for sale, and it was based upon the evaluation of the Facebook traffic and stuff for a few $1 million, and he destroyed it. So that whole mea culpa, I'm sitting there thinking, you know what? You just confessed that you destroyed our company from, in 2018. You confessed it on television.
Yeah.
I wonder if the lawyers could pick up and run back with that and say, hey, mofo, you owe them a lot of money because of what you just confessed to, because you killed their business. And it's not just me, man. I mean, we're talking about, hundreds of thousands of other conservative websites. I know in the first purge in October of 2018 that there was over 500 that including Clash and My Daughter's Girls Just Want to Have Guns, that he killed just like that because of censorship and his little fragile, Silicon Valley, we can't take any kind of difference of opinion. We don't want a horse race. We want it our way, damn it. And so I don't know. There could be some legal repercussions heading Zuckerberg's way for what he just confessed on television last night with his little Shirley Temple haircut.
He did confess. I mean, he blamed the government. And one of my previous guests, Steve Laffey, said, where are the CEOs if you're going to blame the government and they're coming in and threatening you? Why don't you have the cojones to stand up and say, stick it where the sun don't shine, President Biden? I'm not going to squelch people anymore. Yeah. So even if he wants to blame the government, he's still responsible because he gave in because he's a cowardly little man.
Right. Yeah. If you're ever going to really change in life, that's why I think, his whole mea culpa, his come to Jesus, his miraculous conversion, Jimmy, I think it's more full of crap than a colicky baby's diaper, is because he's not taking responsibility. And when I look at, true repentance in somebody whomever it is, who did whatever, it's like, listen, man, I screwed you. I did this. I chose this. I did it, and now I'm asking you to forgive me instead of like, well, Joe Biden made me do it. Joe Biden can't make you do diddly squat, man. You chose to crush conservatives. And listen, I'll forgive. I know I sounded a little bitter early on, but but I'll forgive, man. But just own up to it. You got to take responsibility. That's the only way, again, that I'm going to believe that, oh my God, he put Dana White on his advisory board. He must have turned over a new leaf. Or he could be full of specious do, and he's hornswoggling us all until the power shifts, and then he reverts back to, El Zuckerberg with his jackboot posting policies.
Yeah. That's he showed weakness before, and so maybe they're just trying to make it right, stay in Trump's good graces, and then they'll switch back.
I had a doctor buddy contact me yesterday after his confession. He goes, "You jumping back on Facebook?" And I put ha 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 period, and then I finished with once bitten, twice shy.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting. Your conversations with your legal team might be very interesting the next couple of days, and see other people probably thinking the same thing.
Yeah. No, you confessed it. I'm sitting there like, you gotta be kidding me, man. You're the dumbest person. You should have framed that in a whole nother way. You should have just done it without saying it, because now you could be in this thing called a heap of trouble.
Yeah, heap of it. Real quick, Clash Daily. We often reference DougGiles.org, Doug Giles and Doug Giles Art and all things Doug. But you do have Clash Daily. You mentioned how it was once ruling the roost of Facebook before Zuckerberg squelched you there. You've got a piece up there. It's written by Wes Walker. And it's about, are Islam and Western democracies even compatible? I'm sure that's the kind of content that the old Facebook would not want you to do. They would always want you to refer to the religion of peace. But I'll let you take this piece. We'll post it up also. It's from Clash Daily.
Yeah, this the story that's been absolutely buried is about the systematic rape of British young girls by Muslim, mostly Pakistani men in England. When I talk about the gang raping, we're talking about tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of girls over the last, 12, 14 years. And it's very well documented. Tommy Robinson has been leading the charge, speaking out against it. Jordan Peterson is on it. Elon Musk is posting about it. And it's just buried. It doesn't exist, Jimmy. It's like, well, it didn't happen. And so you've got government officials, you've got local authorities. They won't blow the whistle because it looks like, Jimmy, that if we point out that it's a bunch of Pakistani Muslim men, well, then that's just racist, and that's just xenophobic. And nobody wants to be xenophobic. And so we allow these girls to have their souls shattered, to have their bodies violated multiple times by these bearded, lecherous, pedophile rapists, and there's nary a peep. And it's because of political correctness, and it's because we don't want to, say that Islam is incompatible with Western values, because it is. And they're in Western and Southern Europe by the tens of millions. They experienced the invasion much like we experienced the invasion during Biden's administration. And guess what? The majority of them are on the government dole. The majority of them, men, can have multiple wives, and they're having, 3 to 5 kids per lady. And the Brits, by the way, and also the big Spanish and Mediterranean countries that usually are known for large families, they're having 1.1 to 1.3 now, and their birth rate's diminishing, and Islam's burgeoning. And they predict, these are Muslim clerics, that within 40 to 50 years, you will be ours. They're also saying that about their intentions here in the United States of America. And so these values that the caliphate have are not compatible with our republic. It's not compatible with democracy. And you look at in all those Muslim countries around the globe, those are bad places if you're a fair lassie, because they don't respect you, they abuse you. And now they're doing it And again, they've been doing this, Jimmy, for 10 plus years in a horrific fashion, mostly in England, in the middle part of the country, and they're getting away with it, and nobody's raising hell about it except for Tommy Robinson, Jordan Peterson, Elon, and a few others. But if we don't wake the hell up, and if we don't put bans, it's like, does your country believe this? It doesn't. Well, you're not getting in, okay? And because they're going to take over, they'll do it just through attrition,
A quote from the Clash Daily piece, and this is the interaction. Piers Morgan and Jordan Peterson got in a little debate on the issue, and Peterson pointed out 100% of Protestant countries are highly functioning democracies. Only 6% of Muslim countries are democracies. And Piers Morgan says, well, do they really want to be democracies, though? Well, I guarantee you the people of the country want to be in a democracy. Maybe the clerics don't want it to be a democracy, but the human nature yearns for freedom. So what a stupid thing for Piers Morgan to say, well, they may not want to be a democracy, though. But that's the logic is, well, they're not a democracy because they don't want to be one. I just shake my head at Piers Morgan saying that.
Yeah, and that's why the preaching of the gospel is so important, because whom the Son sets free, he's free indeed. And the freedoms that we have here in America, they're based on biblical worldview. And you get these bizarre, bug-eyed clerics, glamming off the mad ramblings of Muhammad. There's no freedom in that unless you're a dude, unless if you're a woman, you can say bye-bye to freedom, but Christ sets you free, man. There's a scripture in 2 Corinthians 3:17 says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. And Paul said that I'm not a slave to any man. And he said that in the midst of draconian Roman rule. And so I don't know, you got some people listening, Jimmy, that feel like spelunking in the spirit realm, maybe have an adventurous life instead of a boring, pick lint out of your navel, stupid evangelical existence. Maybe go over to Yemen and start preaching the gospel, and maybe see a revival of not only souls getting saved, but bad leaders getting put down and people being liberated.
Yeah, even our founders in the country said the freedom, life. It's all the freedoms are endued from power from on high, from power from the Almighty. And I guess Piers Morgan thinks that that Almighty endowment of power and of freedom was just for maybe the Western world, just for the white guys out there, maybe just for the Caucasians. Everybody else, they may not want to have that freedom. Well, that's God intended for them to have that freedom. He gave us their freedom.
Yeah, and what's again sad that Pierce, in any form or fashion, I watched that whole interview. It's fascinating. They're raping British young girls, little white teenage, preteen British girls, systematically. Pakistani Muslim men. They've got law enforcement silent. They've got mayors silent. They've got the PM not saying anything. And this thing is about to blow like never before. It got ignored for 10 plus years. It's coming out now. And and if I was Pierce, I'd take more of a back seat to it and just let this thing go, because you don't want to be on the wrong side of that coin, or you'll end up like P. Diddy and his buddies. Yeah.
The new book is Giles Volume 1, The Biblical Warrior Collection. It's a book of art. You're also another book for reading, I think, as I Talk Back to the Devil. That's the most recent of the written word, correct?
Yeah, it's an aggressive book, and the church needs to get aggressive in dealing with the powers of darkness and dealing with whatever kind of malady that's coming against them personally, health, finances, family. Jesus, when he dealt with Satan, he spoke the word of God out. Literally, he didn't have a silent prayer, Jimmy. He declared, what thus saith the Lord. And we're in a massive spiritual sword fight with El Diablo, and God's given us weapons, the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, which is the only offensive weapon in the armor of God. And one of the things that the church misses is the power of declaration and proclamation, actually saying it and saying the word of God and declaring the word of God and praying the word of God and doing it out loud with this thing called testicular fortitude. And everybody's like, well, that's not how I'm confitted. Well, listen, if you're in a scrap, if you're getting your ass handed to you, then you need to get aggressive. Who cares whether, it's like, well, we're a Catholic and we don't do that. Well, you better do it now because you're getting your clock clean. Well, we're Episcopalian, you see, and we're prim and proper. David said, shout unto God with the voice of triumph, shout unto God with the voice of praise. Jesus is the high priest of our confession. He watches over his word and makes certain that he perform it. And when the word of God comes, just bellowing out of our mouth, you're going to see strongholds broken. You're going to see mountains move. You're going to see chains fall off your life. You're going to see health. You're going to see healing. You're going to see God's provision come into your family. You're going to see Satan get off your backside, and you're going to see your calling fulfilled. But it takes, again, us utilizing the weapons of our warfare, and the word of God and talking back to the devil is a big, big part of that. So I hope through that book, Jimmy, that a lot of people just absolutely get mouthy and start declaring the word of God like nobody's business.
Giles Volume 1 is the art book. I Talk Back to the Devil, his latest written book. A lot of it's all on Amazon. Go pick it up today and start off your good year, new year, talking about Back to the Devil. Doug Giles, it's good to be reunited here. DougGiles.org, all things Doug. And again, Amazon.com. They can find your books, and hopefully they'll get that new one. Appreciate you, my friend. God bless. We'll talk again next week. Good Lord willing.
Yeah, right on, Jimmy. Stay rowdy, big dog.
You got it, my friend. Doug Giles, DougGiles.org. All right, we're running overtime here, but let me do this. Let's play a clip here for you. Producer Chad, let's bring up that Mark Geist cut, because Mark Geist the other day. It's fun how this new daily update is going, because we get into some pretty evangelical, if you will, spiritual Christian-based things, and I enjoyed it. Doug just obviously did that, and we chimed in. But Mark Geist and I got into a similar conversation this past week. And but the first part of the Mark Geist, of course, is a survivor, a hero from Benghazi. And with the news this week that Hillary Rodham Clinton received the Medal of Freedom Award from old Joseph Rubeloid Biden, I had Mark Geist on the show on Monday and was asking him what he thought about that. Go back and watch that entire interview. It's on the Monday Daily Update. You can fast forward on the Monday Daily Update and get it. And watch the entire interview, because Mark Geist preaches his own little sermon. It was fantastic, diving into biblical characters and the biblical badasses that Mark Geist, Doug Giles and I just talked about. Mark Geist and I did the exact same kind of vein of conversation. But here's part of the conversation that happened Monday with Mark Geist from the Benghazi 13 Hours movie, his portrayal. He almost died at Benghazi. And you'll hear me, I asked him about his thoughts when Hillary Rodham Clinton got the Medal of Freedom, Presidential Medal of Freedom. Go ahead and roll the Mark Geist tape. Clinton was getting a Medal of Freedom from the President of the United States, and you lived through the reign of Hillary Clinton. A lot of what you experienced at Benghazi was probably because of some policies. You heard her testify in front of Congress. What difference does it make? Some people died at this point. What difference does it make? Was terrorists out on a wall because the plan? You just heard her dismissing everything so flippantly, and now she gets a Medal of Freedom award. What were you thinking this weekend?
Really, it's the state of the country and the state of giving out accolades to people, and that really don't deserve it. All it does is diminish the purpose or the notoriety and value of the medal that they're giving. Up there with a great crowd. I mean, George Soros, Hillary Clinton, side by side, getting the medal. Of all of those I saw, those are the two big ones that, really diminish that. What have they done for America other than try to turn it into a socialist country? And, Hillary Clinton.
I think we have a freezing of the video. We got freeze up. We'll post that out today, maybe separate on the Patreon page and open to the public. Just that interview, and you can also scan through the Monday edition of the show. It really is a fantastic conversation that we had with Mark Geist, and that was on the Monday edition of the show. But he talks about what he thought about.
Gaddafi was a bad player. But he was, the whole history of what happened around that time period in 2011 leading up to 2012 was, you had groups that were, Gaddafi had actually started falling away from his despondence towards America and was doing what we wanted him to do, and that was going after bad guys that were having terrorist training camps, Al Qaeda, ISIS, in the Benghazi, Derna, Eastern Libya region. And that's really what kind of started all that. And then his sons were actually in DC trying to negotiate him advocating his leadership there. And there's reports out, and I had heard this myself when I was in Iraq in 2011 when it occurred, is that his sons were trying to advocate for him, or were trying to lobby for him to advocate his leadership and go to a third country and get out of there. And they said no. And it really came from Hillary Clinton, I believe, but it came out of the State Department. So obviously it had to come from her. Was no, you're not gonna, we don't want him to do that. We want to, basically it come out that she wants to kill him. I think it was all a political stunt, and there's a lot of behind scenes stuff. And, that in itself was just as bad as what happened, and the fact that she left 4 Americans to die in Libya.
Gaddafi, if folks maybe go back in history, Gaddafi, if I recall, was starting to get his head and his heart right and start behaving himself a little bit better because he saw what happened to Saddam Hussein, and he didn't want to have that happen to him. So he started behaving himself. Do you have any gut instinct as to why Gaddafi is a bad guy, but he was behaving himself. Why were they so hell-bent on not accepting his new behavior? What was Hillary Rodham Clinton? Did he pull her hair in elementary school one day? Did she did he call her a fat tub of lard? I mean, why does she have this disparaging viewpoint of Gaddafi?
I think that I don't even think it had anything to do with his disparaging look. He could have been freaking one of the disciples, and if it was against what she wanted, she would have done the same thing. I think that she saw what President Bush did, won in the first Gulf War, and how that came out politically for him when he put together the coalition to push Saddam out of Kuwait. And she saw what that did for him politically, how that raised him up in stature, and that he did this, was able, look at the statesman. And she knew in 2011 that she was going to be running for president in 2016. This is all, in my opinion, pre-staged. And if she could show that she could put a coalition together to overthrow this dictator Gaddafi, who is, the mastermind of the Lockerbie, Scotland bombing, the airplane that got blown up over Lockerbie, Scotland, and all the bad things that he's done. And I'm not giving him a pass on any of that, but all of that is just something that she utilized to advocate or to project herself as being a world leader, as being a statesman, and trying to set up her stance for running for president.
Yeah, there's a whole interview we did with Mark Geist. It's on the Monday show. If you ever want to find the easy way to find those shows, you may have to scroll down on Facebook. It's always going to be there. You can find it, or just go to my Patreon page, and it's accessible to people. You just become a free member, and you can watch all of the shows that happen. And we'll post this one up in just a little bit. Sign up for Patreon. There's a free option for you. Patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey, and you'll get notified of all the interviews that go up, but you won't be able to watch all of them. You will be able to watch the daily update. So Patreon is kind of a central town square for what we're doing here. And eventually we'll have a new JimmyLakey.com website being produced as well. So anyway, that's a great interview, and we'll try to put that up in isolation as well, so you can just watch that, as well as the Doug Giles interview. We got a lot of great content here on the program, and I appreciate all of you. Now, listen, we're going to wrap this thing up, and I've got some stories tomorrow that I want to get to. Supporters are urging Donald Trump to cancel a victory rally in D.C. the night before the inauguration. We'll talk about why they want him to cancel that, and we'll get your thoughts on whether or not he should cancel that. Should he cancel this the day before inauguration? And there's some people out there, supporters of Trump, saying, yeah, don't do this. Don't do it the night before. And tomorrow, I'm teasing the show for tomorrow, I will tell you why it is that they're supporting, not saying that they think Donald Trump maybe should not do that victory rally massive in an arena in Washington, D.C. the night before the inauguration. So we'll discuss that tomorrow on the show. Hey, do me a big favor, if you would you share this podcast? Help us spread the word. You are deputized as a Lakey ambassador, an Unleashed ambassador. Spread the word. I appreciate all the comments out there. Well, by the way, listen, it's been a couple more moments, and I asked the question of the day. I want to review some of these answers. If you were the king for the day, this is an honor to the Colorado legislature getting it together. If you could pass any law, you could make a decree, you were king for a day, what would you pass? Roger earlier today said that he would make sure that yoga pants were regulated because, as I said, my friend Tony said, yoga pants are a privilege, not a right. That's good. Obnoxious Scott says yoga pants at Walmart are always just wrong. You know, another thing I would pass an edict for is how people dress on airplanes. I'm surprised how sloppy and nasty people have come. Grown-ass adults dressing like children in pajamas. Stop it. Put on a proper shirt and a collar. I've sent my son back to his room when he was younger. You're not wearing that to the airport. Not gonna do it. Jeff and Casey said they would. Their edict would be: we have to return to traditional gender pronouns. Yeah, I ain't calling nobody they. It's not. They also say no men in women's sports. I want to come back to one of mine. Is that I would make sure that there was regulation on when you could take your dog in public. There just should be regulation. Every place is not dog friendly. Airports are not dog friendly. If you've got a malady and you need a seeing eye dog or something, but just because you're emotionally unstable or dysfunctional or codependent on your dog doesn't mean that dog ought to be on the airplane with you. And it doesn't mean you ought to be. I was coming off the plane the other day from Africa, and there were like 4 dogs on leashes, like they were taking a walk through Central Park. And I'm like, why the dog at the airport? Pay for the dang kennel. Pay for the doggy hotel. That's what I do with my dog. I'm not traveling with my dog. If you think your dog has to go on vacation with you on the airplane, I beseech you and I submit to you, brothers and sisters, that it's probably that money for vacation should be spent on therapy and not vacation. Jim says we should remove common sense warning labels and let Darwinism take care of the next. Take care of the rest. Oh, you mean the. You mean this coffee may burn you? Roger says, I dressed like a homeless man for international travel. I never got robbed. Well, it's on the airplane. I've seen people walk in. It's cute if you're wearing a onesie for pajamas, if you're like 6 years old and mama woke you out of bed to go to the airport, like 4. But if you're wearing pajamas on a plane, why? Don't do that. You're an adult. Don't do that. I'm not saying you got to go back to the days of Ward Cleaver and wear a coat and tie, but for God's sake, at least bathe. I saw people flying back internationally. Look, their hair was so greasy and nasty. It's like, do you not use shampoo? Have you bathed recently? And I see that in domestic flights as well. So again, that's a good one from Jeff and Casey as well. If you're king for a day, you should not wear socks with your shoes or with shorts or sandals. This is true. You know, the kids like to do that. They wear these sandal type things and they wear socks with them. And it drives me crazy. I took my son and his friends when they were in high school I took them to Hawaii for a little vacation. I took them all there, and they're on the beach and they've got their little flip flop things on, or those sandal things on, but they got socks on. I said, guys, you're on a freaking beach. Well, it's not cool. I said, take the damn socks off. I'm going to leave you here and feed you the sharks or something. So yeah, I agree. No socks or shorts. So no, I'm not saying you have to wear a suit and tie on an airplane. I'm just saying that maybe you should at least bathe. At least bathe. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you are officially deputized as an ambassador of the show. Help us spread the word. And again, we're starting to sign up. We're putting the agreements together for the advertising. There's different levels of advertising. If you're a business owner, small business, large business, national business, it doesn't matter. We will custom build something for you, but we have some basic packages out there. Just send us an email today, info@jimmylakey.com, info@jimmylakey.com. Working on this some today, info@jimmylakey.com. And also, everybody go subscribe to Patreon. Now, even if you don't do the $9.95, go to patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey and do the free subscription. And that way you'll always get notifications when content does go up. And then you'll say, oh, that's free content. And then there's some paid content that you have to pay for. But you'll get the idea. Patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey is a great place to be. I want to remind you about my charity work. In just a couple of days, we will send our January round of funding to our school in Rwanda. We feed about 10,000 plus meals a month to kids. And if you want to help us out, we'd love to do. That's the reason I do the charity work. There's my son River and I in front of our Phase 1 Legacy Christian Academy, and your money's going to the kids. And if you'd like to help us out, one thing you could do is make a monthly donation. $10, put $10 a month just for the recurring. Maybe it's $100 a month. Maybe you want to sponsor a whole class or something. Any work you do is helping the kids, and they're all God's kids. And I hope you'll help us out and partner with us. And tomorrow, stand by, the big banner / backdrop is going to be installed, and it's going to be a big time show tomorrow. All right, we went overtime again. I'm glad to have you here on the program, and I'm happy to make your acquaintance this morning. Keep spreading the word about the show. Let everybody know we'll be back here tomorrow morning. Good Lord willing, the creeks no rise at about 8 o'clock Mountain Time, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. May God bless you. May God please bless America. May God keep Donald J. Trump and his administration safe. And may you go to my website and donate to Rivers Promise. Hey, God bless you. God bless America. I'm Jimmy Lakey. Thanks for staying overtime. It's only a 1 hour program, and here we are overtime. Am I getting paid extra for this one? I don't think so. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you tomorrow. I'm out of here. Jimmy Lakey. Peace. Hey, run along. Everybody, out. Clear. MP out. Go. Vamonos. Go to work. Earn some money. God bless you. I mean, hey, I see you up there. You're hanging out. Some of you still hanging out. Let me see where we're hanging out. They're hanging out. Oh, there's a hell of a lot of you hanging out on the Twitter feed right now. Some of the YouTubes. I don't see the Rumbles. You're out there as well. Hey, go to work, everybody. Go to work. All right. I'll see you tomorrow.